AEW founder Tony Khan has called out WWE for predatory business practices in the days following a scandal regarding AEW Collision ratings. We're going to tell you exactly what Tony Khan had to say about WWE on X. We're also going to be talking about two big WWE contracts that are expiring soon and why both of those individuals could leave WWE as they are garnering much interest outside of the company. We're going to tell you all that much more right here in this video, so be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. All right, so for those of you who may not be aware, there has been a bit of a scandal controversy brewing online due to the release of Fast National results for Collision. So these Fast National ratings are basically kind of quick ratings that may or may not be accurate, that are released by anonymous sources, usually to members of the media and other outlets, that essentially try to give an idea, and an accurate one, of what, programs over the weekend, or how programs over the weekend are performing. Now, it's worth noting, usually how this works is when a program is on a weekend, the Nielsen rating for that show, the actual Nielsen rating, which everyone talks about and discourse is all about, doesn't come out until at least Tuesday, because Nielsen doesn't operate over the weekend, so therefore they don't process the ratings. That isn't publicly released until the following Tuesday. So, as a way to kind of, I think hurt AEW Collision coming out of that, what anonymous sources have been doing, and it is believed, as Dave Meltzer will say in just a second, that WWE are the ones who are releasing these. It's not uncommon to see them do that to try to hurt any momentum that AEW would have, give the perception that the company is doing horribly and all that kind of stuff. So, but this one was a kicker because this one was actually insane. So, the Fast National results that were released over the weekend showed AEW Collision with 122,000 viewers in the regular time slot, and only 34,000 people in the key 18 to 34 demo. That would be shocking on so many levels. And then that would be created a whole stir online. You had many, I'm sure, very good faith outlets kind of reporting that and talking about how horrible AEW is doing and all that kind of stuff. The actual results came out, and the actual ratings came out for the show. Ended up being still pretty disappointing, 378,000 viewers. However, very far off from the abysmal 122,000 viewers that were reported in these Fast National results. So that kind of gives you an idea. Fast National results, not exactly the most accurate way of calculating ratings and whatnot. But Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter expanded on this a little bit on Wrestling Observer Radio. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "This was a number supplied by WWE for those of you who feel like WWE isn't concerned with AEW or it's a one-sided thing. AEW is in a war with WWE, and it's a pro wrestling war, okay? These pro wrestling wars are insidious. They are brutal." He went on to say in the same program, "They're both in a public relations war. One side obviously is far more effective as getting news out there and controlling the media, a lot of the media, because they're afraid of not having access or whatever they're afraid of. WWE, obviously, whenever AEW has a badly rated show, WWE makes sure that the Fast Nationals get out. Now, in this case, I don't know how that number got out because that was not the Fast National number for Collision. Again, the Fast Nationals, are not exact, but they're not far off." So that was Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. A few interesting points that we'll touch on before we get to Tony's comments, but reiterates Fast National results, not exactly the most accurate way of, analyzing these numbers and how that program did. It doesn't even really give you, I think, a good idea of how that program did, even compared to previous weeks, just because it's an arbitrary number. Now, if you listen to the other part of what Dave had to say. He talked about there being a pro wrestling war. And I think a little bit of that is, I'm not going to say embellishment, but, I think a little bit of that is kind of the old way of thinking and viewing things, right? Because I'm not saying that WWE doesn't view AEW as competition. I think they do. But I think it's less so of a war now and more so of WWE establishing dominance. And that can be a war. And that can be a way that people think about that. Personally, I don't think the term war is as appropriate as it used to be. Because it used to be the AEW and the key demo, on Dynamite at least, was in some weeks, doing better than Raw. So I think the term war is maybe a bit overstated, but I understand what Dave is trying to say. WWE is obviously pushing a bad narrative. They're trying to push a bad narrative about AEW out there. We've known this too. And look, for people who want to say like WWE would never do this or whatever, as someone who works in PR, you see this on a lot of different fronts. Because at the end of the day, every company, no matter how big or small, what they want to do is make sure that they are seen in the best possible light. And one of the strategies of doing that is to take their competition and people who have other interests than them down a peg. We have seen that across political spheres. We have seen that across entertainment, across sports. This happens all the time. And you should not be surprised, shocked, or, in denial of this fact that WWE, a company that was run by an alleged sex trafficker like Vince McMahon, would be part of these predatory practices. And there were people who knew that, but that's a separate video again. But anyway, there obviously is some sort of public relations war that WWE is winning, and it's not even close. Part of that, what Dave alludes to there, is that WWE is able to have a good relationship with the media because the media is, then in turn allowed to have a good relationship with WWE, that there are members of the media who, are not as critical or kind of push this stuff out, which is true. That is not everyone, and I want to be clear about that. There's not everyone in the wrestling media. I do think there are definitely voices who do that. If you go on your Twitter or whatever, you will probably see some of them. But there are people who do that. And I think one of the things that people don't do enough is like call people out or call companies out for that. And it's not just WWE, it's across many different industries, right? And that is a problem with the perception of media. We know that there was this controversy even earlier this year with WWE and during the France show, where there was a media member who was basically told that he asked a stupid question by a PR representative at WWE, which to this day is one of the most insane and stupid things that you could do working in PR. I like, that is the most unprofessional, even if you don't like the question, even if you think it's a dog shit bullshit question, it is the most unprofessional, absolutely dumb things you could do as someone who works in PR. And if you do work in PR, don't do that. Do not do that. Because not only does it make your company look bad, it is badly representative of you as well. And it just makes, and it's the whole rise above the fray. Like, that is something you handle outside of the room, not right then and there, and not in that manner. It was completely unprofessional, inappropriate, and I just cannot say that enough. But moving on, let's talk about Tony Khan, because coming out of all of this, he did indeed have some words for WWE. Dave Meltzer was going back and forth with a fan on Twitter about this whole scenario, and Tony Khan actually chimed in on one of the tweets and said, quote, "These are the same predatory business practices that Jim Crockett Promotions plus many former wrestling territories faced in the 1980s. I'm very grateful to all of you wrestling fans who watch AEW, and AEW is here to stay. See you tonight on TNT Drama, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 Central, AEW Rampage." So Tony Khan calling out WWE's history of predatory business practices. As I kind of outlined, you could argue that the practices they're doing now are definitely predatory, and compared to like what they were doing like even a few years ago to AEW, right? Like, there was, look, if we're being honest, right? NXT probably would have been better off on Tuesday nights or another night or Thursday nights, whatever, right? In 2019 when they eventually went to television. That is just true. When they went to, like live TV. That is just true. It would have just done way better on any other night. But there was a reason that NXT in 2019 was on Wednesdays. It was because it was WWE's way of trying to hinder AEW from the start. And it failed epically. And that was a war or a battle, whatever you want to call it, that they did not win. Now you fast forward, right? There have been other things, having pay-per-views the same days as AEW, moving pay-per-views to the same day as AEW, doing things like that, and even contract tampering, which I know that is one thing that Tony Khan has been very outspoken about. He was asked about it at a press conference a few years ago, and we now have learned that the talent that that WWE had reached out to and potentially contract tampered with was Swerve Strickland, who I believe was reported to have told AEW executives about it, and then there was a legal notice that was served to Nick Khan, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H coming out of that, because that was very obviously contract tampering. So like there's a history there, but even going back, right, in the Vince McMahon regime, this is not something that it was uncommon for WWE to do, even going back to like the 1980s, when Vince was trying to consolidate wrestling under the WWE banner. Like, it's like I think one of the prime examples, right, is I think it was Survivor Series Starrcade 87. That's one of the prime examples of this, because Starrcade traditionally, right, was around Thanksgiving. It was a big show that WCW had been putting on for years. And then Vince McMahon put Survivor Series on same time as a way to compete with Starrcade. And then he also somehow finagled a way to get Starrcade off of pay-per-view. So there was like so much maneuvering. You can go back for those of you who have seen the Dark Side of the Ring about Black Saturday. Like, that's another very shrewd and predatory business practice that Vince McMahon and WWE deployed against other territories at that time. And look, there are going to be people who say that when WWE did that, they made professional wrestling bigger. They was good for pro wrestling. And let's not kid ourselves. When they did that, it was great for WWE. There's no question in my mind about that. That is fact. When Vince McMahon did all of this and he consolidated wrestling in WWE, he made WWE bigger than ever. He made WWE stronger than ever. He made WWE a global juggernaut. No question. But when that happened, and when you see these practices deployed, it hurts professional wrestling. And you can scoff at that. You can be in the comment section, which I hope you are right now, talking about how much that is bullshit. The fact of the matter is, though, when you had WWE being basically the sole monopoly for years, the product overall suffered, because you had an indie scene that was almost for a decade depleted to the point where it was almost inaccessible to anyone. Many people didn't even know it was happening. You had WWE basically try to curtail any efforts of talent leaving, and then by virtue of doing that, they would sign people to contracts that they wouldn't even honor, and they would release people, sign them back, release them, as just a way to kind of keep that cycle going. And that is because WWE is a company. They are a corporation. And corporations, what they like to do is to protect the entity. They like to protect the corporation, because as long as that keeps happening, more money is rolling in. And that's what it's all about. It is about money. Like, let's not kid ourselves. It's not about making wrestling better. It's not about, I love professional. Even AEW. Like, let's be honest here. Even AEW. Tony Khan has been nicer, significantly more nice than anyone in WWE has, or who's been in charge in WWE forever. But at the end of the day, the goal here is not to put on, like, great professional wrestling. That's not the main goal, I should say. The main goal is to make money. So let's not kid ourselves either way here. But Is WWE deploying business practices that are predatory, that are harmful for wrestling? I think so. And I think anyone who is being honest about it would probably say the same. But we'll see. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of discourse about this online. I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about all of this? Let me know in the comment section. As we move on to our next and final topic, that being free agency in pro wrestling. So let's talk about some of these upcoming free agents that I know all of you have had your eye on for a minute. Let's talk about it here. Oh, boom. Live TV, pal. There it is. Let's talk about it. Chad Gable and Natalya both have their WWE contract expiring fairly soon. In the case of Chad Gable, as reported by FightfulSelect.com, it is expiring today, Friday, June 7th. In the case of Natalya, also reported by Fightful Select, I believe there are a few weeks left on her deal. Now, the interesting thing with Gable is he is slated to fight Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship in just a few days at WWE Clash at the Castle. And that would mean he would be wrestling a WWE match after his contract expires. As I've said in previous videos, this could be a case potentially of him signing a short-term extension, which we've seen people like Adam Cole sign before. So not uncommon for them to sign short-term extensions, finish up a feud, and then leave. I believe Cody even was working as a free agent and was signing short-term deals with AEW right before he left, because he was the TNT champion. So with Gable, right, there is obviously interest in WWE, or in AEW, excuse me. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter actually had said that there were people in AEW who were pushing for him to, reach out to Tony Khan, and there have been people who've been talking about how much they would want him there. So there is interest in having Chad Gable, who is one of the best wrestlers right now, one of the hottest wrestlers in WWE. The reactions he's getting is absolutely off the charts, and you could very easily see him fitting into AEW, having fantastic matches. And I would even see him in a group like the Blackpool Combat Club. I could see him fitting in there perfectly, and I think he could be a big star for them. And look, Forbidden Door is only a few weeks away. If he does indeed lose to Sami Zayn at Clash, and that is his last match, I would look for him to potentially be available as soon as then. And that would be a massive surprise going into that event. So we'll see what happens there. Natalya is a bit of a more interesting story here, because we haven't really heard too much about it. We knew that her contract was coming up. They have been negotiating, but no deal has been reached, according to FightfulSelect.com. Go check that out for more details. But the overall message here, I think, is, there's interest in having her. There's potentially a tie-in here with AEW, with the Owen Hart Cup coming up, and it would be really cool for them to get Natalya, not only for the Owen Hart Cup and what that would mean, and, obviously that would be a massive, emotional deal, but you would also have Natalya, almost 20 years of wrestling experience in there to help that roster grow. And we know that AEW, one of the things that has really, I think, kept that locker room together over the past few years, given all the drama, ups and downs, has been the veteran leadership. And I think Natalya can provide that and then some. And she's also just one of the best women's wrestlers that out there is. One of the best wrestlers there is, period. Now, the other interesting thing kind of tied to Natalya is TJ Wilson, otherwise known as Tyson Kidd, who has been working as a producer backstage in WWE. He's been well known. He's been very well touted. People like him, and he is, I think, a talent in himself as a producer. And I could see a situation, we could all see a situation, I think, where Natalya goes away and goes to AEW, goes to TNA, goes to New Japan, wherever. I think TJ might actually follow her, and that could be something to keep an eye on over the next few weeks as all of this develops. 2024 was promised to be the biggest free agent year in pro wrestling history, with the likes of Kazuchika Okada, Mercedes Moné, Will Ospreay, Becky Lynch now, Chad Gable, and Natalya all being free agents. There's a lot that could happen here. I want to hear from you guys, though. What do you guys think ends up happening with these free agents? Does Natalya end up staying? Does she go to AEW? Does she win the Owen Hart Cup? What happens with Chad Gable? Do we see him at Forbidden Door? Am I full of crap? Let me know in the comments section. Also, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.